So thank you all for joining the October Lee Dems meeting. We're very lucky tonight to have Executive Councilor Cinde Warmington joining us. So thank you, Cinde, for being here. I am going to stay quiet, and Cinde, feel free to do your spiel and take questions whenever you want. So the floor is yours.
Oh, okay. So I was of the understanding there were some specific things you wanted to talk about, but I am happy to talk. I'm Cinde Warmington, and you all know me as the lone Democrat on the Executive Council these past several years now, standing up for reproductive freedom, for the environment, for our schools, for affordable housing, for mental health care, for all health care, for everything that all of us think is important, and which the Republicans on the Executive Council don't value in the way that we do. And so I have been on the Executive Council alone in a 4-1 minority, but have managed to be very effective in that minority. And I now am running for governor, and running for governor because I believe that every single Granite Stater should have the opportunity to thrive. And I just want to say that that to me is it's the promise of America. It's the promise of our country, that no matter how humble our beginnings, that we can work hard and get a good education and, be able to build a better life for our families. And honestly, that's my story. When I was born, my dad worked at the Four Rivers shipyard, and my mom waited tables to make ends meet part-time. And they had 4 kids in 5 years, and but they could still afford a little house and put a roof over our heads. And I got a great public school education and was able to be the first one in my family to ever go to college. I worked hard. I worked 2 part-time jobs all the way through college to pay my own way. But I was able to build a life for my family, my children, and I really got to experience the American dream. And I think that's probably a story that so many Granite Staters share. But I will tell you right now, that dream is slipping away for so many people. And working families, it used to take 1 income, then it was 2 incomes. Now 2 incomes is not enough. And I had a mom tell me that her son is a police officer, her daughter-in-law is an LNA, and yet they have come to understand that they will never, ever be able to afford their own home. And skyrocketing costs of childcare, of housing, of energy, student debt. It's just really become such a burden on our young people, on our working families. And it doesn't have to be that way, right? This is a matter of priorities. So you've seen me on the Executive Council fighting for the things that matter, like affordable housing has certainly risen to the top of the priority list. And as I was, fundamentally, as I said, I believe everyone has an opportunity, should have the opportunity to succeed in our state. But the housing crisis in our state is really undermining not only that, but it is what is underpinning our homelessness crisis and our workforce shortage, and the fact that our young people can't afford to stay in our state and raise their families. So when the governor brought forward $100 million of housing money, I made the point to all of my other counselors. I reached out to all of the other counselors, even though they're of another party. I reached out to them, and we talked about how this wasn't going to work in my district, and it wasn't going to work in their district either. And when we got to the council table, they had me take the lead with the governor, but there was not a single vote for that on the table. We sent it back. We made them put guardrails around it so that it is an affordable housing program. Not as much as I would have liked. This is not how I would have structured the program, but I heard from many housing advocates and municipalities that we really need the housing and we need to go forward. And we are building those units all around, thousands of units all around the state right now. That is a small fraction of what needs to be done there. One of the things that I see with housing is there is absolutely no one in state government that is actually accountable for housing units. So if you wonder why we could possibly get 60,000 units behind, it's because nobody's actually responsible for it. It's not a priority. It's not anybody's job to make sure that we have an adequate number of housing units in our state. We need to fix that. We can. We need to direct our resources in that direction. I am meeting with the Housing Finance Authority, with developers, with the state regarding surplus land, with housing manufacturers, and putting together gathering together all of the thoughts and ideas that around which we can create a real housing policy to actively address this from day one when I step into the governor's office. Another thing I think keeping so many people from thriving is the mental health challenges, especially since COVID. Many of you may know, I spent 40 years in healthcare. Healthcare is the reason I really was ever cared about politics, and in particular, mental health care and substance use disorder treatment. I was on the board of my mental health center in my community for many years, and on the board of substance use disorder treatment facilities, and have actively worked as a lawyer to bring medication assisted treatment to our state and to expand options for mental health care and for substance use disorder treatment. And that is a priority for me as on the Executive Council. It has been all along, and it will be as governor. And I will tell you, the challenges that we are facing here are really dramatic. We absolutely must integrate mental health into primary care and into our schools. We have to do this. We have to do it now. And we can. And I know from my time serving on the mental health board that you can actually send someone into the home of someone who is severely and persistently mentally ill. You can send someone into their home every single day to make sure they take their medication, to make sure they're in a safe environment, to make sure they've had a visit that day. And that will be cheaper than the one hospitalization that will result if they don't take their medicine. So not only is this the sane and humane and right thing to do for patient care, but it also is pennies on the dollar wise, to economically wise to do that. So we would be prioritizing that and working with all of the stakeholders in that environment, which I'm very familiar, to address that problem as well as the substance use disorder issues. And public schools, if you talk about something that gives us the opportunity to thrive, this is it, right? It is public education. It's the bedrock of our democracy. It is what gives every single kid their shot at the future. And we absolutely need to protect it. We need to stop diverting taxpayer dollars to private schools and to invest in our public schools that so desperately need that right now. And primarily, we need a commissioner of education who actually believes in public education. And the main thing I have to say about that is that Frank Edelbluth's term ends 2 months after I take office. So, And then, of course, reproductive freedom. You've all seen me fighting on the nightly news with the governor over his abortion ban, over his failure to protect women in this mifepristone case, over his failure to protect providers who might be providing services from patients who come from other states, and his over the failure to advocate strongly for Planned Parenthood funding. I have been fighting for that on the council from day one. And, when the Planned Parenthood was defunded, I immediately started working with the congressional delegation to get a dire needs grant for them when the sex education program, which was really intended to serve the most vulnerable teenagers, those that were in our foster care system and those that are in our justice system. And when they defunded that, I worked with the congressional delegation to get that funded as well. I'm very pleased to say that program is up and running again because of that funding. I believe, and I think Granite Staters believe, that politicians have no place in making reproductive health care decisions for women. We need to trust women to make their own reproductive health care decisions, and we need to repeal this abortion ban, which is really dangerous to women and dangerous to our entire fetal maternal healthcare system. And then I guess there's so many issues I could talk about: the right to vote, the attacks on LGBTQ folks, the environment. Well, I have to talk a little bit about the environment. We have a commissioner of energy that doesn't believe that government has any role in addressing climate change, and we have a PUC commissioner, the chair of the PUC, who doesn't believe in climate change at all. We have a problem from the ground up when it comes to protecting our environment and to addressing climate change, neither of which are being done under this administration, which is completely tied to the fossil fuel industry and is actually hostile towards renewable energy and clean energy initiatives. We have a beautiful and bright future, energy future in front of us in this state, and we will pursue that when I am in the corner office vigorously. And so some of you might be wondering, why me? Well, you've seen me on the Executive Council, but just to say a little bit about the Executive Council is that, we see how things work in state government, where the money's going, which programs are working, which ones are not. And I work with the legislature. I work with the governor's office. I work with the Executive Council. I know how state government works. Probably most importantly, I actually work with all of the commissioners. And why is that important? Well, when we elect a governor in this state, the governor doesn't get to pick their cabinet like the president. We have to work with the commissioners that are there until their terms are up. And I have been working with these commissioners, and I know how to work with them. They know that I may not agree with them, but they know they can trust me to give them the accurate facts. They know that they can trust me to not politicize their issue and to not put them in the line of fire. So I believe that, they've been working with me for years now, and that they will continue to work with me starting on day one. And I don't need to learn how state government operates. I already know how state government operates. And I represent such a huge portion of our state. I represent 3,000 square miles of our state. From north to south, I know the issues in the North Country, which are very different than the southern part of our state. I know the issues in rural areas, in small towns, and in large cities. And so I really have a statewide perspective on the issues that we're facing. And the truth is, we can't afford not to win the corner office right now. This is our best opportunity in 8 years to take back the corner office, and we have to do it, and we have to put forward our best candidate, and we have to put forward the candidate who can hit the ground running. In terms of the best candidate, well, I know that in terms of who the Republicans want to run against, they asked the governor on the radio who would be what do you think about the Democratic primary? And he shook his head and said Warmington would be formidable. And he said she's, well prepared and smart at the council table, and she would be formidable. When someone asked me why I thought he said that, I said I think he said that because of his own personal experience at the council table. But also UNH did a poll on favorability, and for as long as they've been tracking this in governor's races, no one who starts out with a negative favorability rating has won the governor's office. And I am the only candidate, Democrat or Republican, with a positive favorability rating. So I think I am best positioned to win the race, and best positioned to hit the ground running. And I think that we have a real choice in this election, and I hope that I can count on your support and that you'll join me on the journey. So I am happy to answer questions. It's sort of the best part of all this. So please.
The fun part, right? So sure. Well, thank you so much for telling us your platform. I already know Mary's going to ask a bunch of questions about environmental stuff because that's her passion. So does anyone have any questions? I will say I do have 4 questions that I do have to ask from somebody who's not on, but wanted to be on tonight. He just got stuck at another meeting. But I want to make sure that you all ask your questions before I do that. So does anyone have anything for Cinde? All right, I'll ask mine and we'll get it rolling. So the first question is that I have is on taxes. Have you or will you take the pledge?
I will. I will take the pledge. I think that this is that we do not want to burden our working families with increased costs, or our small businesses with increased costs. I believe that we can create and build a responsible budget. I saw the legislature do that in 2018, and I believe that we will do that again.
I was like, hey, I was in that group. Yay, 2018. That sounds familiar. Any other questions, Cinde, before I keep going down the list that I have? Okay. So the next question that I have is any changes to make on the charter school system?
Well, you probably all know I was the only vote against accepting the $46 million in charter school funding. And primarily not because I am opposed to charter schools in principle, but the way it's been implemented, with the charter schools can be approved by the Department of Education without any consent from the SAU that's affected by it. And because the charter schools that we have were already so stressed and needed assistance that if that money were to come in, I would have liked to have seen money that could have helped those charter schools. But this money was, specifically to open news charter schools. And I think that's just a diversion of funds away from our public schools. And so I oppose that.
Well, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Deb.
I do. I'd like to hear more about your views on LGBTQ ...
So this is, I think that we've had an all-out assault on the LGBTQ community. It's a personal issue for me. My daughter and her wife have 2 beautiful grandchildren. And, when I think about some of the laws that they tried to pass in the last session and how they would allow for the discrimination against my grandchildren, and, even I think, we're headed in a direction, a kind of a scary direction at the Supreme Court level where, we're seeing all out rights to, we may see all out rights of businesses to discriminate against the LGBTQ community. It's heartbreaking to me to see that happening, and that we are fundamentally, this is all about dividing us, and dividing us in so many ways, by promoting hate and fear. And I think we've seen it in our history, and it's ugly in every single form that it occurs in. And we need to do everything in our power to protect against discrimination in all of its ugly forms. If there are specific policies that you're wanting me to address, I'm happy to do that. But in general, I am against hate, and I'm against discrimination, and I would seek to eradicate that at every turn.
Yeah, I guess my question was, what do you see your role as the governor in changing those things?
Right, and lifting up diversity as our strength and not as a liability, and not using it to divide people, but rather to be welcoming and to allow for everyone. When I say everyone has the opportunity to thrive, everyone has the opportunity to thrive. And and to be very clear and decisive when there are acts of hate, and when there are acts of discrimination, as we saw. I was quick to get up to Littleton to stand with the community there against the hate that's being promulgated up there, based on some artwork that somebody finds offensive. The parental rights bill, so-called, parental rights bill, is an abomination that I would veto. I would certainly seek to have voices at the table, and of course the governor gets to do a lot of nominations in a whole variety of different ways and in different places, and would seek to fill those with as many diverse voices as we can have, because again, diversity is our strength, and everyone should have a voice at the table.
Mary, you just came off of mute. Did you want to ask a question?
Well, since you've set me up here.
I was going back to the last question just in case you didn't say anything.
Yeah, so I am very concerned about what a laggard New Hampshire is on clean energy agendas and environmental agendas. And I am just curious what your priorities would be in terms of trying to get us back on some kind of respectable track.
Yes, so I am very pleased to be working closely with Kat McGee on the environmental issues and all of the agenda items, because it is not a small area to take on. So just talking first about climate change and the fact that we need to recognize that climate change exists. We need to replace a PUC commissioner. We need to replace our commissioner of energy. We need to have a real climate action policy. And that, includes things like investing in energy efficiency and renewables, and, sort of doing some of the things that the governor has done to block. I mean, his hostility towards, say, solar is just palpable. I don't understand it. And his unwillingness to, or the obstacles he puts in the place of developing community power and the net metering, none of that is, well, I mean, it makes sense in the context of if you're trying to preserve fossil fuels. I think it's important that we expand electronic vehicle charging stations around our state. I think we need to invest in all of the renewables, wind and solar. I am, concerned to see the biomass plant coming offline, although I understand that the issues with some emissions there. Hydro, I mean, I just think that I think we've maxed out our hydro in the state, but we're, really, I think I am hearing very good things about the program of bringing the Canadian hydro through Quebec. That project, I think, is a vast improvement over the original Northern Pass that was proposed before. So investing in energy efficiency and renewables, and really taking our foot off the throats of those that are interested in really bringing us a new energy economy. And I think that's just what you've seen with this governor, is just his pure hostility towards doing anything that interferes with our dependence on fossil fuels. I'm sure I've missed some things, because it is such a large scope of things. So let me just talk a little bit about clean air and clean water. I have been I've been working with the folks up in Dalton on the landfill, and one of the issues that became clear to me that I learned in this process is it's not surprising to me that it's hard to get maybe people all around the state to be concerned about a landfill way up north, right? It's affecting one part of our state, and maybe other people aren't really tuned into it. And one of the issues that became clear to me was that landfill creates leachate on a regular basis every day. Trucks have to go in there, pull off that leachate, and pull that out and transport that. What they do with it is then they truck it to our wastewater treatment facilities, where it is treated and then either discharged into the source, the water source, or it's put into the sludge field. If it's put into the sludge field, it dries up, and then it is taken, collected and taken back to the landfill. So we're creating this cycle of contamination of PFAS into not only into the Dalton area, but also into the water supplies. And I am concerned that the Department of Environmental Services is not taking a more proactive role in eliminating PFAS. So I have been raising these issues on a fairly regular basis at the council meeting to start lifting those up, so that people understand that this issue doesn't affect just one part of our state, but affects our drinking water all over the state. Did I cover it, Mary, or tell me this more? No,
that's fine. There is so much to cover.
When
is the PUC commissioner's term up?
6 years. His term is 6 years. So it's 6 years from when he was appointed. It seems like forever ago that he was appointed, but I fear it was only two years. I'm not positive. Yeah. So we have a ways to go there. And even the governor basically appointed him and the prior PUC commissioner for the purpose of eviscerating the energy efficiency program, which they did. They completely eviscerated, and the legislature had to restore it, although not completely back. But I mean, who's hostile towards energy efficiency, right? I mean, even the utilities, everybody is for energy efficiency. And, the utilities will tell you that if you don't invest in energy efficiency, they have to build more infrastructure. So it's, even they are for it. And yet the governor did that, and they took that action, and they continue to be hostile towards energy efficiency at the PUC. It's mind-boggling, but this is where we are right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I would want to just say that I don't live in with rose-colored glasses on. I understand how big the challenge is. For the last several years, the governor has been able to sort of run around the state, acting like Santa Claus, giving out all the money that the federal delegation worked so hard to bring to our state. Never giving them credit for it, of course. But he's had a lot of money to spend in our state. And of course, that money will all be obligated or spent by the time the next governor steps into that office. And of course, he has reduced taxes at every turn. So I'm very clear about the fact that this is a roll up your sleeves kind of activity. I do think 40 years of healthcare experience, 20 years in hospitals and 20 years as a healthcare attorney has really been a leg up for me. And of course, spending countless hours reviewing every contract that the state enters into has given me a very, very good understanding of what the challenges are and what, where the opportunities are.
Thank you. I think, Sue, hold on one second. There's a question that we had come up that was, I think, from Mary the last time we had a conversation, and it was, Cindy, how would you balance, since we're talking about the environmental stuff, how would you balance growing industry, but still maintaining everything that's special about New Hampshire and our environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is, that's the key, right? And we have gone too far, I think, where we have a Department of Environmental Services that literally, when they receive an application, no matter how much they think that it's not a good idea. I'll give you an example. DES does not think it is a good idea to put an asphalt plant in downtown Nashua. Right. And fortunately, downtown Nashua City Council has put the kibosh on that. But DES does not think that's a good idea. They don't think it's a good idea for all sorts of reasons, but including the vapors that come off of it, the truck traffic, the lead that results from the truck traffic that lands on the windowsills of the residential neighborhoods that are right around there, the noise pollution, there are just a whole host of reasons why it's not a great idea to put that asphalt plant there. But they see their job as taking that application and trying to work with the applicant to make the project work. And I think that's just I think, we have good people in the Department of Environmental Services, but they take their direction from the top, and that's the direction that they have been given. And they will be given a direction that includes that protecting the environment is your mission, right? Protecting the environment is your mission. And of course, we have to respect that we need businesses to operate in our state, and that we need for them to operate in the cleanest ways possible. But protecting the environment is the mission. They don't really see it that way. They see it's very it's almost like a permitting agency, where they see it as their job to just make it fit, which is what's happening right now with the Dalton landfill. They're in there trying to look and see what can we do to, this proposed project to make it work. And maybe it just shouldn't work. Maybe it just shouldn't work.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Sue, go for it.
Oh, okay. So you were talking about PFAS and the current government's inability to kind of treat it with the seriousness it should be treated. And I know the congressional delegation totally understands what a serious problem it is, and has been providing money to clean up Ps, at least through the Armed Services Committees. When I was working in Congress, that was one of the things we worked on. And so I know that the two senators, at least, I don't know about Custer, and I have absolutely no idea about Pappas, but he isn't on relevant committees anyway. I think that they would be more than willing to throw money at this problem that New Hampshire has with PFAS. And I'm just wondering if you have some experience in working with the congressional delegations, and what you think. Do you think that they would be willing to try to fund restoration efforts and other environmental projects that would benefit the state? And do you think you could work with them on that?
Yes, so this is one of the things that I have done differently as an executive counselor, is really coordinate with the congressional delegation, in part because we have a governor who doesn't, right? And so whenever I see something that is happening on the executive council, that they are defunding something or undermining something that I think that should be addressed, then I'm coordinating with the congressional delegation. And I had given a couple examples earlier. There are more, to get additional funding in directly from the delegation. Also, I coordinate with them around, and they coordinate with me around money that has been secured by the congressional delegation, but not yet expended by the state. And to the point that we may be at risk of losing it, or that it's just sitting there, we're not getting the benefit that the congressional delegation intended. So I am on a very regular basis in touch with the congressional delegation to identify what those issues are, to see what questions I can ask. I'll give you an example. I know Senator Shaheen's office was very upset about the $30 million, no secret about this, the $30 million in childcare funding that they secured during COVID that had not been invested in our childcare system at a time when we really need to be investing in childcare. And so the delegation and I coordinated, and on their behalf and from my own interest, asked DHHS to please provide a schedule of exactly how those monies were going to be spent and when they were going to get committed, and making sure that they were going to be spent and not end up going to waste and being sent back. And I was finally able to get from them the commitments of exactly what contracts were going out for RFPs, when the RFPs were going to be issued, when the awards were going to be made, when they expected to be at the executive council, and when those funds would be expended. And so all of that is now happening, and we are monitoring it carefully, but looks like that is going to happen after quite a lot of effort. But yes, I guess the answer to the question is yes. I do coordinate with the delegation on a regular basis. I think you might have seen last year, Congresswoman Custer and I did an op-ed with Mayor Donchis over the defunding of rail in Nashua. And so, yes, I'm working with them on a regular basis.
Good.
I would just say there's a number of other things that I sort of have done differently as the executive counselor. Just I came in thinking, foolishly thinking I was going to be in a majority. The council before mine was a Democratic majority. I never expected to be the only one, but there I was the day after the election, like, okay, I've never been an executive counselor before, and I'm the only one. I'm going to have to find a way to, number one, just be relevant, because they have 4 votes and they only need 3. So they could just ignore me. I need to, find a way to be effective and make sure that we are getting things done for the people of our state. And so this has been truly, an all-in, roll up your sleeves exercise for me of, number one, I read every single contract because I'm the only one. From our perspective, I don't know what they're trying to get by us, right? So I have to read every single contract. I work with every single agency. I try to get to know everything that they do. I'm keeping an eye on, when they're reappropriating money, when they're whatever contracts they're bringing, whatever nominations they're bringing forth. I'm checking with various stakeholders all the time. And so one of the things I've done differently is coordinate with the legislature, because there are things that come to us, the Executive Council, that also go to the Joint Fiscal Committee. So I will often, if I have something on my agenda, I will call up members of the Joint Fiscal Committee to say, hey, where are you on this? And tell me what kind of concerns, questions that you have as well, so that I could be reinforcing some of their messaging. In some cases, if I see something happening on the Executive Council level where the legislature is being undermined, I go back and talk to them. For the first time, we formed a group where Matt Wilhelm and Donna Susie and I were meeting on a regular basis to coordinate, and I coordinate around messaging as well. So coordinating with the congressional delegation is different, and coordinating with the legislature is different. And then you probably saw that during my term, I started the Executive Council Campaign Committee because I really was tired of being alone on the council, but there I am still alone because of the gerrymandering. But we do have that structure in place, and I am still, actively concerned and involved in recruiting candidates for Executive Council, because I think it is just something that we, really haven't done before. There's never been a caucus of the council, and so now we have that structure, and it has a seat on the executive committee of the New Hampshire Democratic Party, and it is working to elect Democrats to the council. So important, so important.
Okay, well, I've got 3 more questions that I can ask. And David, one of them is from you from the last time. So let me finish up with Eric's questions then. Any Republican legislation from the past session that you immediately want to reverse if elected?
Well, any expansions on the education freedom accounts. I mean, just I would love to see that entire program go away. It's really an abomination that we're diverting taxpayer dollars to private schools. And also, I have been raising concerns about the fact that they're so unaccountable, these schooling situations. They don't have to have certified teachers. They don't have to follow any of the same requirements, and including, and one that we've been really highlighting, is no background checks. And that's just, I just can't even imagine what they're thinking. But I understand that they can't dictate to private schools that they have to have background checks. But I think that when you give them state money, I think it changes that. And they are now the recipients of state money, and they should have to follow the rules, and including the basic protections of our children, and in background checks.
Cool, thank you. I agree with that. And then the last question that Eric had was, what distinctions are to be made between you and your Democratic primary opponent? And I feel like you've already answered that one too, but if you wouldn't mind just recapping that.
I think we have different experiences, and if you think about, what's important about this election, it's number one, who can get elected. And I think I am ready to go toe-to-toe with Kelly Ayotte on that debate stage. I do go toe-to-toe with the governor on a regular basis. And I think that I am ready to hit the ground running on day one. If elected, there will be, being on the executive council is like 4 years of on-the-job training to be governor. There really is no better way to learn what goes on in the governor's office than to be on the executive council. So And I have a very statewide perspective. So council does the transportation plan. So I see transportation from a very global perspective. And I see issues that are very different. Emergency medical services, huge. I'm working with Sue Prentice on this in our rural areas where in the North Country, Littleton Hospital reported that they can have a patient come in who needs a transfer to another hospital and they have to wait 12 hours because of the lack of services. So we have really focused in on emergency medical services. I'm very aware of the need for broadband and been working really hard to make sure, because honestly, this money that we're getting right now for broadband is once in a lifetime money. If you think about it, it's just like when we electrified the country and we were trying, getting to that very last mile. It would never, ever have been financially feasible for a private for-profit entity to go that last mile. And that's the situation we're in with broadband, that there are locations all around our state where it's just never going to be worth it financially for a private entity to take the fiber that last mile. But that's what this money's for. It is for the last mile. So I consider it my job, for one, to make sure we get to every last mile. And that's what I've been focusing on, working with the folks at BEA. I feel like we're doing a good job right now. We've been smart about the way that we've been spending that money, covering locations at a much lower per location rate than other states. I'm hopeful that we really will get to every last mile, because this is like so important to our rural communities. You can't access so much healthcare, educational opportunities for small businesses. And by the way, guess what? Young people will not live someplace where they don't have broadband. So much of these issues are all interrelated. And that's an important one in the North Country. But I know these issues from all over our state. I know the issues of tourism, and I know fish hatcheries. I know farmers and flooding issues and FEMA money. And I'm dealing with these issues all over our state on a daily basis.
Thank you for that. Mary, you got off of mute. Did you want to ask another question?
Yes, what do you think we should be thinking about as New Hampshire becomes a state with an older population? What new factors are coming to mind?
Well, we're doing the 10-year highway plan right now. And we hear at almost every single hearing about the need for public transportation. We are so far behind. And of course, the council defunded the feasibility study for rail, but, we were in Keene, and a young woman came and testified and said that she had a medical condition that prohibits her from driving. And if she wanted to take public transportation from Keene to Portsmouth, it would take her 23 hours. I mean, that is like we have just totally, dropped the ball on access to public transportation. So that's certainly one of them. Workforce, healthcare, long-term care. These are critically important issue. Food insecurity among our elderly population. It's a particularly big issue right now in the North Country. I'm sure I'm missing some, but that's just a few of the things that we have to look at. Plus, let's also address the fact that we can't just accept that we're an aging state. I hear this from the governor all the time, like, oh, we're an aging state. And it's like, well, yeah, but are you going to do anything about that? Are we going to do anything to entice our young people to stay here? For instance, how about we invest in higher education so that our tuition isn't the highest, in-state tuition, and our kids aren't graduating with the highest debt load, it's cheaper for kids to go to an pay out-of-state tuition, go to another school than it is for them to go to UNH. And so they're leaving. And once they leave, then you know, it's harder to get them back. So investing in our younger folks and making it so that our young people want to stay here. And that, of course, is all tied to childcare and housing costs and energy costs and all the other things that we've been talking about. None of these issues exist in a vacuum. They are all so intertwined and interrelated.
I have a question. I'm interested in the housing issue. And my interest is, I totally agree that we need more affordable housing for people. Totally agree with that. My worry is that people are not thinking about the consequences of increasing all the people moving in terms of infrastructure, the roads and the grocery stores and the traffic. So I'd just be interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, we have people living in our state and they need housing. We need to provide housing. The population is increasing. We have, unfortunately, really increasing homeless population because housing is too expensive, and other issues obviously there as well. We absolutely cannot continue to have a vibrant economy without housing. This is what employers are telling me everywhere, is I can't hire because there's no place for people to live. And we have really a lot of fear around housing. But, I think that we do have to change the narrative on this so that people understand, the people that you're keeping out are your children and your grandchildren and your police officers and your teachers and your firefighters, and the people that are going to care for us as we age in our state. So we really do have to change the narrative around this and provide the infrastructure that does allow for increased density of housing. Working on the transportation plan, we know that our roads haven't completely recovered, or ridership hasn't completely recovered since pre-COVID. It's pretty much getting back there, but it hasn't completely recovered. But I said, well, if ridership goes down, can we extend out the length of time that the road, will be a good road, or does it still need to be paved? Do we still need to pave 500 miles a year versus 450 or 400 miles a year if we're riding on them less? And of course, they say, well, no, time and weather is actually what really does the wear and tear on the roads. Ultimately, you can't get away from that. So in terms of that increased roads, we have a real problem. If you've attended any of the transportation hearings, but we used to pave 500 miles a year, and now we're paving 400 miles a year. And under the proposed plan going forward, and once we get to 2026, we really only have the money to pave 200 miles a year, which would really bring the quality of our roads way down. So we have to focus on that. There's a $20 million hole in that budget that we're going to have to address. So there's so many issues, right? So many issues. I just want to tell you how much I love digging in on all these issues and tackling them and rolling up my sleeves and just learning. you know, you have to bring all the right people together and get all the voices around the table and make sure we have the best minds on all of these problems and be thinking outside of our silos. You know, we can't think of housing all by itself. You have to think of all the things that you're just describing that are impacted by increased housing. You have to think of the things that are impacted when we have less housing, right?
Well, one example is, you know, we needed a doctor's appointment. We had a test done 2 months ago and have to go back to the doctor. We don't have an appointment until February. That is the first time we can get an appointment. And that is absolutely crazy. So, and why is that? And what's being done about that? And there's all sorts of things like that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just heard from somebody yesterday that a specialist, a doctor specialist, and I still have, you know, obviously so many connections to that community. Haven't worked in healthcare for 40 years, but telling me that it was 2 years for a patient to get a primary care doctor from when they moved to the community till they could get a primary care doctor. And I just cannot let this moment go by without talking about the fact that the abortion ban only exacerbates the lack of healthcare around our maternal fetal healthcare system, because when you put those specialists in a position where their license or their liberty is at risk, if they make a decision that some legal authority disagrees with, then they're, you know, less likely to want to be in your state. And, you know, when this abortion ban was enacted, Dartmouth made that clear. We have a limited number of those kinds of specialists that are providing that, you know, that really intensive, complicated pregnancy care. Those specialists support the OB-GYNs that are working in the community. And, you know, the OB-GYNs don't feel safe without having that specialty care where their complicated pregnancies can go. And none of them feel safe in delivering healthcare, reproductive healthcare, in a system where their license or their liberty is at risk. So, you know, it's dangerous, and of course, it's, you know, a completely inappropriate ban. And as I say, you know, for nearly 50 years after Roe, we trusted women to make their own reproductive healthcare decisions, and they made the right decisions for them and their families, and that's where we should be.
Okay, I've got 2 more questions. If y'all can hang on past 8,
Oh, there it is already, 8.
y'all can have no life like me and just stay on all night. I mean,
Go for it.
I don't want to hold you. You've got another meeting. Okay. So David, you asked the last time, and since we're talking about healthcare, I'm assuming you want to know this answer. But Cinde, you had touched base at one point about health, mental health, and the healthcare system. And David is actually an ER doctor, and usually asks, how are you planning on changing and improving the system and making sure that we have enough beds for everybody, and just kind of making sure that everyone is treated?
Yeah, I mean, specifically, like I've asked before, and I was kind of waiting to see, because she kept talking about healthcare. I was kind of waiting to see what she was going to bring up, because I can like add another hour's worth of questions. But I guess my main question was, like, being an ER doctor, you know, the whole thing with the mental health bed crisis. There's not enough beds in the state. You know, there's a lawsuit, you know, not too long ago, which was kind of a circus. What are your thoughts about trying to figure that out and fix that mess?
So glad that you asked this question. So when we had $15 million to open, to give to a provider to open a new psychiatric hospital, initially the governor had proposed giving it to a for-profit entity. And I looked at the proposal and said, well, we don't have any guarantees here that this is going to alleviate the hospital boarding crisis, because you're not requiring that they have DRF bed, designated receiving facility beds. You're not requiring that they take Medicaid. You're not requiring that they prioritize New Hampshire patients. And you're not requiring that they prioritize in terms of acuity the patients that are sitting in those hospital emergency rooms. And so, as I went to the other counselors, and this is again another really good opportunity that I had to coordinate with my Republican counselors, and they listened to me and said, yeah, that's right. And we sat down with the governor and legal counsel and talked about, this is what we would want to see in a contract. It turned out that for-profit entity, that never worked out for them, but Solution Health did accept that, and they're building that hospital right now. So that's 120 beds. I think it's really about 60 net beds from what we have now. But as I was working, I was working in the southern part of the state as an attorney, and we were looking at the whole mental health care system. And I had some experts in here who kind of tried to reduce this to an analogy that lay people could understand, and said, do you know, like if you had an outbreak of stage 4 colon cancer, you wouldn't build more stage 4 colon cancer treatment centers, you would do more colonoscopies. And that's what you're missing in your system, that you have never built out this full spectrum of care. We don't have primary care integrated into mental health integrated into primary care. We don't have intensive outpatient programs. We don't have partial hospitalization programs, and we have nowhere near the number of transitional beds that we need, either on the front to alleviate the front door of the hospital beds or the back door, because we can't discharge people right now from hospitals because we don't have transitional beds. If we had those transitional beds, we would not probably have a bed shortage at this point. But we haven't built out the continuum of care. And guess what? It's cheaper to build out the continuum of care than it is to have people have none of those services and have people end up in the hospital, which is the most expensive setting, and quite honestly, the worst patient care. So that's my thinking, is that we build out the continuum of care. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's definitely primary care, providing the front end rather than the back end. I mean, as an ER doctor, I mean, a lot of what I do, I shouldn't have an abundance of work.
Right. Yeah. I would like to see, by the way, more Suboxone started in hospital emergency rooms.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole.
Yeah, I got another whole talk on that. Yeah.
Any other questions? I have one more, but it's the one I always ask as the chair of the Lee Dems. So does anybody else have anything else before I wrap it up? No. Sue's thinking. Well, Cinde, I just want to say thank you, first of all, for being here. I really do appreciate you taking your time and chatting with us. What can the Lee Dems do to help you?
Donnie Spencer is on the line. Donnie he's the deputy campaign manager of our campaign. Spread the word, talk to your friends and neighbors. If you have any events in your community that you think we should be at, let us know. When the time comes, I understand we're in a primary here, so some things you won't be able to do as Lee Dems, but as individuals, we'll need help with signs and door knocking and phone banking and all of, letters to the editor and all of those things. But right now, CindeWarmington.com is the website, and you can go there and you can sign on to endorse the campaign and volunteer. So, but mainly spread the word. Obviously, you can donate to the campaign, right? It's obviously that's the lifeblood of any campaign is being able to get your message out, and that takes the money to do that.
Sadly but true. All right. Well, awesome. Well, thank you again. I appreciate you being here. Anyone else want to have any final words?
Thank you very much. It was really helpful.
Yeah, very pleasure to be here. Thank you all.
Cool.
All right.
Have a good night, all. Thank you.
Bye now.
Good night. Bye-bye.